Hey my friends, Rachel, the Water Fire Mama here with you. This video is for couples who are the parents of children with special needs. Staying married can be really difficult under normal circumstances, but when you pile on the demands of special needs caregiving, including the added pressures to your finances and schedule, it pushes most couples over the edge. In fact, only about 1 in 10 of these marriages survive. Today, I'm going to shed some light on the negative cycle we often get locked into as couples, why we get trapped despite our best efforts to keep things copacetic, and the one most important thing you can do to save your marriage. Welcome back. Since I started out as a marriage and family therapist about 17 years ago, I wanted to help couples learn to avoid the pitfalls that drive them apart and make them feel miserable. When my husband David and I had our first son, Luke, we had a choice to make. Do we let the added stress of having a child with medical and developmental special needs drive us apart, or can we use it to strengthen the love that bonds us together? Throughout the last 15 years of our son's life, we have worked hard to make that second choice a reality. Throughout this video series, I want to show you our best practices so that you not only stay married through the water and fire of special needs caregiving, but your marriage becomes an anchor and a source of joy for you. To do this, we've got to understand some pretty foundational things. First, we all have basic core needs and motivators. We want to be loved, respected, effective and successful at what we do, connected to others, safe and secure, and have some level of agency or control over our lives. We all value these things at some level, but you probably rank them differently than your spouse does. A little caveat, this is not 100% true for all couples. I'm about to make some generalizations, but I found that it's been true for about 3/4 of the couples that I've worked with. So take what is helpful to you and leave what isn't. So we all value those core needs and motivators at some level. Men tend to prioritize feeling effective and competent. They will often try to avoid situations where they don't feel effective and gravitate towards situations where they do. This is amplified in the special needs family because while guys are so often wired to fix things, they can't fix their child's disability. I've observed several special needs dads feel defeated at home because they can't do anything about their child's disability or their wife's feelings, and so they lean into their work or hobbies or relationships where they feel competent and respected. Now, it's not like women don't want to feel effective and competent at what they do, but they tend to prioritize feeling connected and secure. If their loved ones aren't safe, healthy, and happy, it's difficult for them to feel safe, healthy, and happy. This gets amplified in special needs families because the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Moms will often gravitate towards situations where they are needed most. They will devote most or all of their energy to helping the child with disability be okay and won't reserve any energy for taking care of themselves, their spouse, or their marriage. Okay, so we've placed that first step in what I like to call the downward spiral. Not getting those core needs met, specifically but not limited to, needing to feel effective and secure and for all the family members to be okay. And so when those needs go unmet, we feel off balance and vulnerable. When that feeling of vulnerability reaches this tipping point and we start to get desperate for relief, maybe after trying to contain a long meltdown, opening multiple bills you don't know how you're going to pay, or even just feeling overstimulated after spending a rainy morning indoors with the kids. We might try to soothe ourselves with whatever is going to relieve the pressure and make us feel good as quickly as possible. This is not that different from driving down the highway starving and you pull over into the nearest drive-thru and order the biggest thing on the menu to satisfy that hunger. Our desperation can make our discernment go out the window so that we soothe our vulnerability with some not so healthy behaviors. Perfectionism and controlling, micromanaging makes us feel effective or secure. Blowing up in anger or seething with resentment, Materialism, buying stuff gives us the illusion of status and security and comfort. Burying ourselves in work or a hobby where we feel successful. People-pleasing to gain the approval or admiration of others. Or compulsive behavior like overspending, overeating, and substance abuse. All these things have temporary pain-relieving effects that work to soothe our vulnerable feelings, but often alienate our spouses. Now we've got step 2, using not-so-healthy behaviors to soothe our vulnerable feelings. Keep in mind that in most scenarios, each spouse is engaging in their own set of self-medicating behaviors that could very well be triggering the other partner and ramping up their vulnerable feelings and not so healthy behaviors in an attempt to soothe them. Here's step 3. When something our spouse does makes us feel insecure, we often react with criticism, defensiveness, withdrawal, or even contempt, which is expressing the attitude that we are better than they are. These are what marriage researcher and therapist Dr. Gottman calls the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. If those behaviors are allowed to run rampant in your marriage, they could become catastrophic as they drive you apart, making each of you feel more ineffective, afraid, isolated, and resentful. Let me give you one example of how this downward spiral might look in my marriage. I can oftentimes feel overwhelmed and insecure being the primary caregiver for our son Luke, who has special needs. When I feel that way, I tend to overdo and over-control the details of our day. That's me trying to self-soothe with perfectionism. Sometimes when my husband David tries to work with our son on bathing, dressing, feeding, or playing, my drive for perfection and control causes me to criticize the way he does those things. David feels like he can't do the things up to my expectations. In other words, he feels ineffective and unsuccessful and gravitates toward playing video games where he feels very successful at killing monsters on a screen. As a result, I feel abandoned and resentful that David isn't helping me. So I tell myself that if he's not going to help, then I have to do all the caregiving things on my own. And my belief that I must overdo and over-control the details of caring for Luke is reinforced. So we get locked in this cycle where we're both struggling to find soothing and support, but we're just making ourselves and each other feel worse. So what's the antidote for this downward spiral? Well, it's pretty simple, but it's definitely not easy. We have to soothe our partners when we least feel like it and when they least deserve it. Let me explain. When I notice that my spouse is being critical, defensive, shutting down, or acting ugly, in other words, when I spot the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse rearing their heads in our relationship, I need to take that as my most reliable signal that my partner is feeling vulnerable and needs my support. It takes a huge amount of self-government. But if I can quiet my own vulnerable feelings being triggered by my partner's behavior and respond compassionately instead of reacting defensively, I can stop that downward spiral from getting out of hand and even start to reverse it. So between now and when I see you again, the only thing I want you to do differently is to keep an eye out for those 4 horsemen and start to shift your thinking into what you and your partner are trying to communicate with that behavior. What is prickly on the outside is often a sign of vulnerability beneath the surface. There's a lot to dig into surrounding how we combat the 4 horsemen, how we can be proactive about soothing our own vulnerable feelings so we can respond to our spouse compassionately, and how we can ultimately reverse that downward spiral. So make sure you like this video and subscribe to the Waterfire Mama channel so you don't miss any of it. Next time, we'll get into the first horseman of contempt and how to fix it. One more thing before we go. If this video was helpful to you, but you or your marriage needs more targeted help to get through the water and fire of your specific situation, I want to extend my invitation to you. I would love to work with you as a coach. Click on my website through waterandfire.com in the description and fill out the contact form so we can get connected. Remember, Waterfire walkers, you may feel like your marriage is crumbling beneath your feet, but our God goes before us and is our rear guard. He's going to carry us through these tough days. He's got you, and I'm here to help. I'll see you next time.